I feel there are more people who want to now claim space
Mm.
and reclaim also space in that sense of to sort of state that this is my life too. I mean, maybe pick up from Bon Jovi as one of the judges quoted, you know, and you know, just want to be, you know, themselves, whichever
Yeah.
way they are. And I think that is definitely the undertone of what I'm seeing and feeling.
Hi, everybody. I'm doing another conversation on the Supreme Court verdict that has dashed the hopes of so many gay, lesbian, trans, and queer couples looking to get married and looking or seeking the protections and privileges, and most importantly, the dignity and acceptance that comes with marriage in our country. Now, that is not to be, but over the years, I've realized that continuing to talk, with open minds and open hearts makes a big difference. And I've had the privilege of having many such deep conversations over the years in parallel with the fight for rights that the LGBT community has gone through in India. I'm delighted that Sharif is joining that list today. Please welcome Sharif Rangnekar. He is a media professional who's worked in the private sector. He is today the director of the Rainbow Lit Festival, which is going to be held in December. And he is also an activist for equality for LGBTQI rights. Sharif, you're also an author. I forgot to put that bit in. Two
Yeah,
books, isn't
that's
it?
okay. Yeah, two books, two, and both are queer in that
Both
sense.
based on your personal experience. Sharif, when you this is when this is your experience of being a queer person in India, does it become almost automatic that you become an activist, that you become an advocate, that your personal story then becomes the key part or the most consuming part of your identity in a sense?
Well, yeah, I think you see the whole aspect of coming out itself is a decision to come out to a certain number of people, and that it's a continuous journey because you don't come out in one place or one set of people. But once you do that, it is considered brave because you've been through a very grave sort of way of living. And the moment you're seen as brave, the moment you're seen as speaking up for yourself, for your identity, for your choices, for who you love, for the relationships that you might have, you automatically are viewed as an activist.
Mhm.
So you know you can't run away from that because these are labels that are thrown at you, and so willy-nilly, I think everyone who comes out is not just brave, but they're contributing to the movement because as we've seen in majoritarianism, uh, in politics, in the way people view life, uh, then and they go with the herd. So every time we need to be heard, uh, we have to sort of find a stage, take a mic, snatch it sometimes,
Mm.
and speak up. So we invariably seen as something or someone who's disrupting their idea of living, and so then we don't live any longer in a country where activists are largely loved, or everyone seems to forget the many rights and privileges they have today came from activism, came from some human rights movement. But
Yes.
today we're in that sort of world, and I think with very few of us being able to come out across the country, uh, we're labeled in that manner.
Hmm. Sharif, you were at the Supreme Court, isn't it, on the day the verdict came out?
Yeah.
What did your mother say after you came back? Because she's someone you're very close to her. She's someone who has, allowed or enabled you to sort of be yourself. What was her reaction after this came in?
I think there are two beautiful words you used, and I say allowed and enabled. When I had gay men coming home, when I had some of my boyfriends stay over, my heterosexual brothers both of them who lived abroad, would say we could never have a girl come over and stay. We couldn't even think of it. So I said, maybe you never tried. And but I think when I look at it aloud, that was a huge thing my mom did because she didn't, I think, realize that, um, or maybe she did realize that there were very few safe spaces for us. And so she's enabled a lot of things for sure, as you said. And when I left home in the morning for the courts, uh, first she says, you're free already, you and Roshan. Now you'll be freer. So her expectation was no different than mine, than many others who expected certain things of the court, of that bench. So she definitely could feel that I was unhappy, and she asked about some of my friends who were also expecting a verdict in our favor.
Mm.
Um, what are they going through, and things like that. So uh, yeah, so she is disappointed. She's disappointed too, but I think she keeps that to herself and tries to
Boost your
cheer me
spirits,
up
isn't it?
through.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sharif, what do you see happening next? Because you're part of the community. Do you see more legal action, or do you see some time pass before the courts are reached out to again? And what do you make also of this? The first part of two bits that the verdict is offering. One is that a committee to be set up with experts, with the cabinet secretary leading it, to try and solve basic living day-to-day problems and make things easier for queer couples. And then the second part, of course, which is enacting laws, expecting parliament to enact laws, state legislatures to enact laws that will enable these rights.
As you said, I've been a journalist, and we've seen committees come and go. We've seen committees waiting to be constituted. And it's not just about our lives. It's how governments have functioned and how the bureaucracy works. So the expectation is extremely low, uh, in terms of whether a committee will be set up and by when. So I think had the courts put some timelines, it would have really helped, because then it becomes like a powerful, directive.
Mm.
Uh, because let's just look at LGBTQIA plus, or let's even look at women's issues in parliament, right? These have been debated in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, where even now, what has come through, we have to wait for a census, we have to wait for other things to happen before
The
anything
women's
really,
reservation, yeah.
uh, yeah, on women's reservation in parliament. Uh, we've seen uh, we're still, there've been committees set up, far more serious, I would say, committees set up on political reforms, police reforms, etc. Nothing comes of it if they even meet, you know. So looking at that from, one would want, I would want this government to change my mind and belief in how governments function by actually constituting
Mm.
this committee, and by fairly having a kind of representation that is more inclusive, and that representation should cut across various intersections of existence
Sure.
within the community, because we're talking disabilities, we talk about caste, we talk about religion, tribes within our community. We look at all of those factors, out there. And so that representation should be also national in that sense, because when we're talking about cultural change and cultural nuances, etc., I think we have to look at practices in different states, and approaches to queerness in different states and communities.
Sharif, post 2018, there has been a sea change, or there was a sea change in the way the queer community felt, was perceived, and was, represented even. Do you see any breaks on that momentum as a result of this verdict? What are you worried about now, even though you see things that can be built on?
I obviously there is a sense that someone's put a barrier. Okay.
Mm.
But I think we have to recognize that there is a large young queer community who would pick up on the terms and words used in 2009 when we were in 2013 when we were recriminalized by the Supreme
Mm.
Court.
Yeah.
It
When
was
it
no
turned
going
down the
back.
Delhi
And
High Court judgment. Yeah.
yeah, and I see that no going back is being used by various young activists, advocates for our rights, and I feel that there is this push forward, uh, that we are not going to give up. Obviously, legally, we don't know what next can we do, but the lawyers will answer that, I think, in due
Mm.
course.
Mm.
But I think it's important, uh, as we are pausing and recovering from the verdict, that we are reading the verdict in more detail to
Mm.
see what is at least there that we can use. And what I found with certain community groups, and I did mention the LBT group being one of
Mm.
them, that they're picking up certain sections and making community folks across the country aware that these rights now exist with you. Now it's come from the Supreme Court. You
Mm.
don't have to only look for a Allahabad High Court order
Mm.
or a Kerala High Court order or any of those. It's come from the Supreme Court.
Mm.
I think that sort of messaging is amongst the things that are already starting to happen. Um, I think the community is going to come together a lot more because uh, they have, it's like when you are out of choices, you sort of create a huddle. It's like on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
football field or a rugby field. You
Mm.
want to you come together and then try and find some answers. I think that's what's going to sort of happen. And even not to really pitch the Rainbow Lit Fest, what I'm seeing
No, please do.
suddenly
I was
since that
actually just
verdict.
going to say, tell me
uh,
what you've got lined up, because I remember attending the first one a few years before COVID, and it was quite spectacular what you had pulled off, and the kind of, it sort of was so embracing, and there was so much that was there in terms of food for thought and emotional connections. So tell us what you have planned for the Rainbow Lit Fest in December.
yeah. Well, we have at least over 30 things happening over 2 days on two stages. That's hell of a lot. Between films, between performances, talks, discussions, etc. I would say one thing which has happened by itself is the less of the better known mainstream people. Not to say that we don't want them, we do. Uh, but it's more queer in that sense in its proportions. It's a lot of people we may or may not have heard, or because
Mm.
we are so sort of exposed to mainstream popular culture,
Mm.
that we miss voices that are extremely critical, and improves the way we think, each one of us. It opens the mind. So we have that. But what I'm seeing is suddenly there are more queries, more requests, etc., of wanting to be seen and heard.
Mm.
I haven't seen that earlier on when we did the digital festival or the physical one in 2019.
Mm.
Um, that there was that sort of keenness to be heard, to be seen, to speak, seeking venue registrations. Tickets have just gone live.
Mm.
Um, but so I feel there are more people who want to now claim space
Mm.
and reclaim also space in that sense of to sort of state that this is my life too. I mean, maybe pick up from Bon Jovi as one of the judges quoted, and just want to be themselves,
Yeah.
whichever way they are. And I think that is definitely the undertone of what I'm seeing and feeling.
Right. So, Sharif, claim space, reclaim space to be together, to continue soldiering on in solidarity. I think those are some of the things that you're saying that we are taking away from this conversation. I wish you a lot of good luck. Hopefully, we will see you at the Rainbow Lit Fest, and this battle continues, and you're surrounded with a lot of love and support from a lot of people. So I don't think that one should let this bog you down, isn't it? Especially for younger people who've come into a world that was much kinder and better formed than perhaps you did or I did.
Yeah, I mean, we are from a generation who, as you used to say, in India, you say adjust karna padta hai. We grew up adjusting to so much so that we sort of we're more familiar with negotiating cases because we've lived in a physical world too, more than on a digital world.
Yes.
Whereas a younger generation, I think it's quite different for them because they've grown up with, quite a few have grown up with 2009 when we were decriminalized. They've seen the recriminalization. They couldn't get it what it is to live with 377. So they could fight for something they already had. So I think I have always pinned a lot of hope on the young, and I feel they're the ones who are going to keep that flag up there, and they have the fire in the belly, to keep fighting.
You're
I
passing
would
the
too, but I can't without that.
I think everybody has a role to play at a different cycle at a different stage in that cycle, Sharif. I think, everybody subsequently standing on all your shoulders and proceeding on this battle. Thank you very much for this conversation, and
Thanks.
wish you a lot of luck, Sharif. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anuradha. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.